Hello, my name is Kai, and I'm a bit of a rambler. I like to travel, learn, and tell stories. And welcome to another Ramble On episode, where I just talk about what's going on. Okay, so last episode I talked about the weird introduction to my Airbnb, which was pretty fun for me. But I didn't make it to actually talking about Quetzaltenango, or Shela, as it's known. So, Shela, the actual city. Shela was fine. Like I said, it was just a smaller version of Guatemala, Ciudad de Guatemala. But the shops were more interesting to me than the ones in Guatemala City. I'm not sure exactly what it was. It looked like they just had more style in Shela. Like, a great example was probably my favorite taco place in Shela, even though I was only there a week. It was called Taco Chine, which is like Chinese tacos. And I asked the guy, oh, why is it Chinese tacos? The guy who was working in there, and he was like, oh, it's just pork. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe they just thought it was a cool name. But there was like a picture of a pig wearing a Chinese costume on the sign for Taco Chine. And I was kind of confused. But I went back there, and their tacos were really good. Didn't have anything to do with China as far as I could tell, but they tasted great. And the inside of the restaurant had nothing to do with China either. It was just the sign that said Taco Chine. But the inside of that store was super cool. It was the cut-off front 30% of a VW van. And it's open in the back where the body normally would have been. There was a grilling station, like that's where the kitchen was. So he had all these spices and sauces on shelves all back there, and the windshield was still there and intact, but it was perfectly clear. And on that dashboard area, there was a mount, not quite a rotisserie, a skewer, I guess, and there was a full half a pig up on there. Or maybe it was a full pig. I actually didn't see it from the back. But so the entire windshield of the VW Bug front was taken up by this very well-looking roasted pig. And I got super excited because it looked so good. And I didn't even realize it. I was just going there because I was so curious why they called them Chinese tacos. And so I ordered 2 of them. And then after a couple minutes when I was waiting, I looked to my right. There were so many things going on in the restaurant. There's like street signs and all these decorations. So I didn't even notice the van at first, but I was waiting right in front of it, like 5 feet away. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. It's the front of a VW van. And then I looked in the windshield and there was a pig, and I was like, oh, wait, what's happening? And that was the kitchen area. And there was a heat lamp inside keeping the pig warm. And I got a lot more excited about the tacos then. And with good reason, because those tacos were fantastic. They were pulled pork. And the pork was flavored very well, just a little salty, nothing complex, just a simple salted smoked meat, and it was very, very good. Very, very, very good. So Taco Chine in Shela, pretty good stuff. And that was nice because it was right next to where I lived, like a 5-minute walk or something. I only went there once, though, because of 2 big reasons. One was that there were a ton of places to try to eat at, so I didn't know which one I would go to. And 2 was that I found my favorite tostada enchilada place, run by someone named Eunice, or Nisi for short, and I saw her making one of the enchiladas. They're tostadas in Ciudad de Guatemala, and I guess in Shela they call them enchiladas, even though English-speaking people know enchiladas as something different. So the enchilada is on a tostada and put on top. But I saw her making one when I was walking home one day, and my brain was like, no, eat that. That one's good. And there's tons of people selling enchiladas and all sorts of tacos all around the city when I was walking around, but that one looked particularly good, and I could tell it was mostly vegetables. And I could do with a bit of vegetables anyway. Keep it healthy. And so I backtracked a few steps and asked to get one, and it was fantastic. Instantly my favorite tostada. And she told me that it was her grandma's recipe. And that's very cool. Even before I thought, that's cool though, I thought, whoa, her English is way too good. Her English sounds fluent, like her accent and her vocabulary and her mannerisms just sounded basically fluent to me. So I asked her a couple questions, and she kept speaking fluently. And she's just a savant. She is very good at English. And I went back there a second time after that, a couple days later, when I got the ravenous hungry for the carrot enchilada again, and it was just as good as the first time. And it was really fun just going there and talking with someone who spoke such good English that, one, I was embarrassed because my Spanish has improved a little since I got here. I'm more comfortable with speaking Spanish with people, but it's still extremely stilted, and I forget half of the words that I want to use, and I use half of those words incorrectly anyway. But that's now like the third person I've met in Guatemala City with basically fluent English, which is pretty nice to run across every now and then, so I can just have a regular conversation without struggling to get through the blockade that is my own fault, my Spanish, low level of Spanish. And the last day I was in Shella was great because Nisi was there, and I was able to bring a beer down from the Super 24, a Mosa, by the way, which is my new favorite Guatemalan beer, which I feel a little bad about because Gallo is not great, but it's super popular in Guatemala. And the Guatemala City brewery that makes Gallo is huge, and the Cabro brewery is smaller, and I usually prefer the underdog. And the Cabro Reserva, which is from Quetzaltenango, from Shella, is really good, but I finally tried a Mosa because it was a Bock beer, so I assumed it was from Germany or some Western country. But it turns out the same company that makes Gallo also makes Mosa, which is a very good beer. And I was like, ooh, I guess I do like the Cerveceria from Guatemala City because Mosa rocks. And yes, it was my last day in Shella because I did move on to Panajachel. But that last day, I was going to say, I ate 7 enchiladas, carrot enchiladas, and sipped a couple beers and hung out with Nisi, and we just talked about movies and all sorts of gab talk. And then I was full, and I had to pack because I was leaving the next day, and so I said goodbye, and then I was looking down at my beer that I had just finished, and I was like, okay, remember, you can turn this in, you can return the bottle, get a couple quetzals back. And last time I totally forgot and just took the bottle home, and then I had to walk twice as far to return it the next day. So I was really proud of myself for remembering to return the bottle to the store. And I got to the store and returned the bottle, and then when they handed me the 2 quetzal, I was like, wait a minute. I didn't pay for any of the food I just ate at the enchilada stall. And I just said, thank you, and just walked away from Nisi and her stall without paying. And I started laughing pretty hard because that is not the first time I've done that. When I become really comfortable with a restaurant or just a food vendor in general, a sign that I've become really close to your restaurant and that I really like your food is that I eat until my fill, and I'm so content that when I'm finished, I just walk away, floating on cloud 9, belly full of food. And usually I remember within the first couple of minutes of walking away, and I'll be like, oop, and I'll turn right around and pay. And that has happened so many times in China. I'll get really comfortable with the place. I'll eat my favorite food there. And then I'll say, thank you so much, so good seeing you again. And then just walk right outside, remember in 10 seconds, swivel around on my heel and walk back in to the 2 owners staring at me like, did you forget to pay? I totally forgot to pay. Yes, here you are. But this time I made it all the way to the store to return the beer bottle before I realized that I had eaten the most I had ever eaten at that stall because I was just like, this is my going away feast. And then I hadn't paid anything and just said, thanks, bye. And it was very funny because when I walked back down the street and turned the corner, she and her assistant were talking to like a group of people there who were getting some enchiladas, and we locked eyes, and I just started laughing right away, and we all realized that I had just walked away and forgotten to pay. So I paid, and then it was a good second goodbye, and I probably should have gotten more enchiladas. And then I went home and packed and got ready for my journey to Panajachel, the town that everybody has told me I should go to. Pretty much since I got to Guatemala, anytime I mentioned I had a few months here, they were like, cool, go to Panajachel. It's nicer than here, was the second sentence everybody usually said. Or, oh, you haven't been to Panajachel yet? Why? And now I know why everybody was so incredulous. It costs the same to live in Panajachel as it does in Chela or as it does in Guatemala City, but it's a tropical paradise? So, Lake Atitlan, you've probably heard that name if you know anything about Central America. It's a pretty popular lake, and it looks beautiful, and it's surrounded by volcanoes, so it's like a Windows desktop, I'm sure. It's a pretty popular place, but it's still not very accessible. There's a lot of stuff interesting about Panajachel. But you know what? I'll probably get into that on the next Ramble On, because I haven't even talked about Chela except for my new favorite enchiladas and Nisi. Okay, another good part of talking with someone who is so good at English is that I feel bad about my Spanish, and so I try a lot harder to speak Spanish with other people when I'm outside of that person's company, because the more I speak, the better I get. It's a very clear line, and I just don't speak to enough people. One, because I'm listening to podcasts half the time, I'm learning something really interesting, and so I'm in my own world when I'm walking around. But I also make these podcasts, and I read a ton of books, and I watch movies in English, so I don't give myself enough time speaking in Spanish to remember my Spanish. Every time I do, though, every time I have a 30-minute conversation in Spanish that I struggle through, afterward, my level has permanently increased. All that knowledge from high school is definitely floating around in my head, because after I have a big bout of Spanish speaking, the next time I talk to someone, another little bit of grammar comes back, and another few stanzas of vocabulary flow back naturally into my speech. And you know what's kind of nice about this trip? I'm not going to fly to another country right away that speaks a different language. I'm in Central America. I'm going to go to Panama next. They're going to speak Spanish also. Probably going to hit a couple countries in South America. They'll speak Spanish. So I'll really be able to get a good base, a good foundation again that I can hold in my head. Because usually I'll go to Japan, and then after I study Japan and speak it for 3 months, I'm finally feel like I have a conversational hold on the language. I'm like, all right, let's go to Laos. And then it's a completely new language, and I have no idea what to say. Or Thailand, and I've never been able to learn Thai. The first time I made a real good go of it, and I learned the alphabet, and I learned some phrases. But then after a few months, I went to, where did I go? China or something? I went to another country where the language was totally different, so I didn't get to continue that language learning odyssey. So it's kind of nice right now that I'm just traveling in Spanish-speaking countries, and I just get to keep practicing Spanish. Pues si yo practico mi español. Now, my accent is pretty good, but it has the same problem here that happens in every country. I learn a few phrases, I speak it with a good accent. The person talks back to me because of my accent and assumes I can say anything, and then I have to, lo siento. Habla más lento, por favor, porque mi español es muy malo. Lo siento. Yo olvidé muchas palabras. And they're like, I don't know, man, you're speaking in a pretty okay accent. I should overwhelm you. And that is my fault for not studying when I could have, but I really wanted to watch a Tarantino movie or listen to Song Exploder and learn how Decepticon was made, which is a really good story. That was a good episode. Okay, so I was talking about Shella 10 minutes ago. So let me get through Shella before I can move on to Panahachel in the next Ramble On episode. Oh, I also got to listen to the Song Exploder about Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears. You can imagine how good that was. It was the best. I love those guys. I love that they're still playing. I saw them in New York. Did I tell you? Oh my gosh. Seeing Tears for Fears at 70 whatever they are, and they still sound almost perfect is crazy. They played all their hits. Oh, so good. Bethel, New York. So awesome. Okay, anyway, so Shella. I went to the Municipal Theater where there's supposed to be a bunch of shows, but I had decided by that point that I was only staying for a week, and I was already tired. I had some books to record, and I just decided not to see a show while I was there for a few days. It never looked open when I went there in the afternoon or the evening anyway, so I'm not sure, maybe because it's the rainy season now in Guatemala, there aren't as many shows going on, or they close for the rainy season. Like, there's a theater in Luang Prabang in Laos, and they just close for 8 months a year. They close the entire rainy season, which, yeah, is 8 months. I want to go back there. Which reminds me of Shella. It was weird that there was no rain in Shella, because people talked about rain, and they said it was going to rain, and every day it said there was going to be thunderstorms, and then there just weren't most days. Sometimes there was a shower, but it was very light, like that sprinkling Seattle type thing, or Portland. So I don't want to call Shella a liar about their rain, but I was there for 7 whole days out of the year and it didn't rain, so... No, that was pretty great for me because I got to walk to the bus stations and walk to all the municipal theaters and really get my exercise in, because I didn't exercise the previous week. So I feel pretty good about getting to walk every day. And I walked all around Shella because, like I said, it's not super huge. Oh, the Airbnb, before I forget. I was cooking water with the teapot that they had in the kitchen, and I was waiting around for the water to boil, and I glanced up to my right, and on the top of a metal bookshelf thing, there was a life-sized child doll wearing panties. And it was just lying supine on top of the metal bookshelf. And there's so much stuff in that kitchen that I hadn't noticed it before. But yeah, there was a weird kid doll, and she had 2 kids, so I'm sure it's for learning how to do diapers or something like that. But it was just laying on top of the bookshelf, and I thought that was creepy and weird and it added a lot of personality to the kitchen, I'll say. Oh, you know what was so weird that I keep forgetting to mention? The whole time I've been in Guatemala, if an ad pops up while I'm walking around on my phone, so many of the ads are USA government-funded anti-immigration ads. And it's that idiot Kristi Noem just saying, look, don't try to come into the USA illegally. It's really bad and we'll throw you in jail and throw you back. And there's like these 30-second ads of real footage of people, I believe, climbing the fences or getting into the States. It's just such an irritating reminder of how much money they are wasting. I'm really happy to be traveling right now, especially now more than other times. But it's a bit odd to walk around in the city and then an ad pops up on my phone and it's telling me not to illegally sneak into the US. There were a lot, too. Half the time an ad popped up, it was the same anti-immigration ad. So that's apparently $200 million gone. Moving on. I got to climb Cerro El Baúl, the most famous little hill mountain. A lot of people called it a mountain. 600 feet above the city of Shella, so it's 8,600 feet high. And the second day I got there, I ended up sleeping like 13 hours. So I didn't get up until it was already 5:30 p.m. or something like that. Nope, wrote it down. 4:45 p.m. I woke up. And I had planned to climb Baul that day, but I was like, oh geez, I don't know if I have time. But I checked and the sun was going down in an hour or so, and it would take me an hour to get to the top of Baul. But I had to shower and grab my bag and get dressed and all that. So by the time I did that, I only had half an hour left. But I was like, whatever. It's not a huge climb. You climb a billion mountains, it's fine. And so I just started walking through the neighborhood, found a couple cool places, and then found the trailhead and made my way up. And it got dark halfway up, but it was fine. The trail was huge. And I saw other people climbing up and down too while I was on my way up. So I'm glad I did it, because if I didn't do it that day, I would have waited until the next day when it was still light. And then on my way up, I would have discovered that the trail is completely safe and very wide and easy to walk up, really. So I'm glad I went that night. And it was a cool sight from the top of Baul to see the lights of the city all lit up and see the very clear boundaries of Shella. Wait, about the tacos from Taco Chine. So a bunch of taco places give, let's say, 3 tacos, and then you get 2 small tortillas with each one. Does everybody put half of the stuff on top into the second wrap? I don't eat both wraps at the same time. Most people here I see just pick up both wraps and shovel all the food in their mouth. But I really like to pick up the top wrap, pour half of the taco filling into the second wrap, and then I have 2 tacos instead of 1 taco. I double my taco time. And it's not as messy. I always end up dropping stuff out of the 2 wraps with everything on top because they always fill it with so much great taco filling, and I just can't shove it all in my mouth that easy. So I'm wondering how many of you out there do the same thing and divide your tacos so 2 tacos become 4 or 3 tacos become 6. My cup overfloweth. Anytime I'm eating tacos, I just want more tacos anyway, so that's a really easy life hack for me to double my tacos immediately. I gotta mention Let's Kill Ward's Wife because that's one of the funniest movies ever, and it had a super low rating for a very long time. The lighting is weird in the movie, but it's such a funny movie, and I think in recent years it's gaining like a little bit of traction. I think maybe it was 20 years too early for people to really find funny, but it's one of my favorite comedies for sure. I've watched it a lot of times now, and it's just as funny. It's remarkably funny every time I watch it. I'm so surprised at how well they do the comedy. It's so funny. I just watched it with someone who appreciated it, which is great. When you can watch a movie with someone else who appreciates the same kind of humor as you, that's fantastic. I just watched it, I don't know, not 2 weeks ago, and I could watch it again now with someone or by myself because it's that funny. And there's not a lot of movies like that. I don't watch anything really anymore on repeat. And I watched Let's Kill Ward's Wife maybe 3 or 4 years ago or something, because I remembered it being one of the funniest things I've ever seen, but I hadn't seen it in 10 years since the first time. And when I watched it again, I watched it a second time directly after watching it the first time, which I hadn't done in a decade with any movie. That's how funny it is. And then I showed it to everyone in my family, and I still want to watch it again. I don't know, what a good movie. Let's Kill Ward's Wife from 2014. I'm still talking with Mario, my security guard friend from Misco. He got my contact information the day before I left, and every now and then he just sends me messages about, hey, how's it going? And that's kind of nice, just to talk to someone while I'm traveling around in their country. He seems really excited that I'm visiting Guatemala in general, and doesn't have a lot to say. His day-to-day is standing in front of this big gate and waving as people go in or out of the gate or walk by him. That's what I did every day. I lived there for 3 months, and I just waved at him, and then he waved back, and every now and then, ¿Cómo se encuentra? Bien, bien, ¿y tú? But he seems like a really nice guy, and I still get messages from him while I'm traveling around in other cities. So hey, Mario. I think I have to get a credit card without international fees. At this point, I keep having to budget my withdrawals around how much cash I have left, and I've been using cash only for 15 years now, a long time, ever since I started traveling. 13 years, I guess. But if I just had a card with no international fees, I wouldn't have to constantly be planning out my cash withdrawals. So I think I'm going to do that soon. Oh, Panama is kind of an international city. I wonder if there's a bank there I could open up an account at and get. It just seems crazy that I'm traveling again for a long period of time, buying all these flight tickets, and I'm not getting any of the rebates or cashbacks that everybody else is getting. Just seems crazy. You know what else is notable about Shella is that Cabro is from Shella, but Gallo was still the most popular beer. I thought for sure I would get to Shella, and then Cabro would at least be more prevalent or equal to Gallo, like it would have more of a presence, because it's very rare to find Cabro Reserva, especially when you're in Guatemala City, but it's just as rare in Shella. Like a lot of the stores didn't carry any Cabro at all, and the ones that did only carried Cabro Extra, which is not as tasty as Reserva, but all the Super 24s had decently priced Cabro Reserva, so I just went to the Super 24s when I needed a Cabro. But I walked to every supermarket and most markets on my way from the bus station to my Airbnb in Shella, and I kept being like, this is weird. Because I went to giant maxi dispensas, like huge supermarkets, and they just didn't have Cabro. And I went to one also, La Torre, which is a very popular giant, like Walmart-sized Central American store, or at least Guatemalan department store. And they have tons of food. And when I asked the guy if they had Reserva, he said they did, and then he checked and he was like, nope, no Reserva. It's all out. And I was like, oh man, okay. So the Super 24s had it. So I just went to those every time. But I thought that was so bizarre that the town in which it was made didn't have the beer available. So Gallo must really be taken over. And now that they have Mosa, bad foresight. Bad foresight? Forelook. Prognosis. Bad prognosis for Cabro. I kind of want a Cabro. I think I'm going to get a Cabro. What else happened in Shella while I was there? Oh, the new pope was chosen, so there was a huge celebration for 2 days straight, and then smaller celebrations before and after. But for 2 nights, there were procesiones, where they carried what looked like a big casket to honor the dead pope and, I guess, welcome the new one in. But there was a huge rollout poster on the side of this church, and all the food people gathered in one area, and I got a whole bunch of tasty little snacks. And it was cool just to be around this huge community celebration while it went on, walking around the nice park I lived near. That was right next door to the giant church, where all the festivities were going on. Okay, and that was Shella. Shella was no rain, a pretty good climb on a mountain, great Chinese tacos that were just pulled pork Guatemalan tacos, 2-for-1 pizza that was slightly underwhelming, sorry, fantastic enchiladas and good conversation with Nisi, and then just a bunch of nice walks. It's a very mountainous region, so I do like all the exercise and climbing around. But a couple days ago, I strapped on my rucksack and checked out of the church family Airbnb and made my way to the bus station to get to Panajachel. And I have a lot to say about Panajachel, and I'll tell you all about it next week. Spoiler, it's great.